bullets would hit me, and I turn them into gold, right? No matter what it was, I turn it around. So it was like, give it to me, I'll make it work. It's a balance because you have to think, I'm going to win, but you also have to understand I can't make stupid decisions and lose because of my ego. This is BS. We're giving away revenue. This is $10 million, $50 million a year in revenue. Say, give me those businesses, I'll run them. And sure enough, like 2 weeks later, he's like, I need you to pivot. You need to run these two businesses. My parents are immigrants and don't have an education. You had every opportunity, and your parents had every opportunity to be successful. Difference is they put in the work.
Hello and welcome to Living Rich Sirop. This is the podcast where I help you to find your truth just like I had to do when I had hit rock bottom a long time ago and had to remember what it was like to be rich. Today is my first ever episode that I'm having a guest, and my guest has been my best friend for 35 years. He is the Executive Vice President of Originations at Cascade Financial Services, and his name is Nelson Daluz. Nelson, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, my friend.
From the moment I met you, you could have become the next Tony Robbins. You're like Mr. Motivation.
I listened to a lot of Tony Robbins as kids, and I remember us listening to a lot of motivational tapes as we were going to the clubs. So a little different than most other 18, 19, 20-year-olds. But
how many? We were like 17 when we met, and you and I would be in the car. I didn't know anything about motivational stuff at all. You had pictures of business executives, posters on your wall in your house. You always wanted to rise up, high up in a company, start your own business, make a lot of money. You were even in business how old were you when you were already basically running your parents' business, the bakery business?
I tell you, I was like at 15 years old, I was doing the accounting, writing the checks. Once I started driving, I was delivering bread and, trying to add to the routes and add stores in the Cape and other places. So yeah, I started pretty young, and my parents were immigrants, right? As you know. So and they didn't really speak the language. So I had to get more involved than obviously most kids. Wasn't always fun because most kids in the summers were at the beach or in the parks or hanging out with their friends. And I was in a 110-degree bakery making bread. Good in long term, as a 13, 14-year-old, not exactly how you want to spend your summers, but it was a foundational build out for the future. So
do you still feel like even today being in your company, you're in the top 5 people in the whole company, right?
Yeah, I report to the CEO.
You report to the CEO. You're at that level in the huge mortgage company. You've been so successful in your career. How much do you look back at those days working in the bakery, running the bakery, trying to grow the business? Yeah. How much has that impacted you as a leader now?
Significantly, right? Because to me, it was the work ethic more than anything else. Was you had to work for what you had. And here's a big thing I talk about. My parents had, I'd say fairly successful small business, right? They were able to provide a good life for us. We had a nice home. We had nice cars. We never went without. We didn't really do vacations or anything like that because they worked all the time. But I would have, and I'll go back a second, they had an 8th grade education. So they came to this country, 8th grade education. They didn't speak the language, and after 50 years, they still barely spoke the language, right? And luckily, we're in a big Portuguese community, and they could get around everywhere without really knowing the language. And when I would hear other kids that were born and raised here, and their parents were born and raised here with every opportunity that this country has to offer, and they'd say, well, you're rich. And it's not like we were rich, but we lived in a nice house, and I drove a nice car. It would really upset me, and I'd kind of lash out. I'd be like, well, my parents are immigrants and don't have an education. You had every opportunity, and your parents had every opportunity to be successful. Difference is they put in the work. And I still, to this day, we implement that in our kids. Like when they go to work, they need to be the hardest working kids at work. And I hope, because they live a whole different life than I did, and they get to do things that I never was able to do, that their kids are raised the same way with that work ethic, that nothing is given to you. You don't deserve anything. You have to earn it. And I think that is so key, that a lot of people feel entitled, that I should have this. I'm too good to work that job, right? That's not enough for me when you have to grind it out, and people forget that things aren't just given to you. You have to grind it out. And I came up in that lifestyle that you had to grind it out. And that's been the base of my success over the years. I haven't always been the most educated. I may not always been the smartest, but what I did is I figured out, how am I going to outwork everyone around me? How am I going to figure out how to beat my competition, my peers? And I would spend hours and hours at the office, 70, 80 hours a week when I was a young kid, to try to, comb through reports at 9 o'clock at night to see where can I win? Because I can start somewhere, and it all comes down to that grind. I
Why do
have
you
to
think some
get better.
people, I think a lot of people out there, they want success, they want money, they're not lazy, they just don't know how to do it. And some people grind. I know I've had clients come through that I've helped
Mhm.
that are grinding, grinding, grinding. They're putting in the work and the results still aren't coming.
I've seen a lot of, as you know, I've been in a leadership role for, man, I mean, I got my first branch to be manager at 24 years old. I'm now
Wow.
52. So, and I've been in a senior manager role for 22 years or so, and obviously an executive role for probably the last 5 years or so. And a big part of my job, and probably the most important part of my job, is developing people, um, hiring the right people, training them, pushing them outside of their boundaries. Like, to me, that's the most exciting. Where people think we can't do that, I'm like, yes, you can, and we will do that. And here's how we're going to do it. Because then when people achieve that, it's unstoppable. I think the biggest thing with people is they they don't believe that they can do it. And
Mhm.
when you don't believe that you can do it, you won't do it. And you need someone like a coach, like a good manager, which a manager is a coach, to push them outside of that comfort zone. And let me give you an example. Again, I'll give you an example of one of my, I think, greatest success stories over the years. I had a branch when I got promoted to regional vice president. I was working out of Arizona, and I had a branch in Las Vegas. This branch was about 8 months old, and it was shattering records for new branches. They were doing phenomenal. And from a volume standpoint, I know the volumes won't make sense, but they will as I kind of talk about growth. They were doing about $1 million a month in loan volume, and we do residential mortgage loans. And Dan was getting all kinds of accolades as one of the fastest growing new branches. And I go in there my first visit, and this guy's just a great guy. I said, Dan, you need to do $4 million by the end of the year, and you need to be the number one office in the country. And he looks at me like, but that's like $4 million a month. That's the best branch in the country. I'm like, yep, and you're gonna beat him. That branch is in Hartford,
He was
Connecticut. You're
expecting a
gonna
big
beat
pat on
me.
the back, and he got a
He's
kick in the
expecting to
butt.
pat him back. And I'm talking to him differently. I said, look, you're in the fastest growing city in the country. We have good loan values. We have equity. There's no reason why we can't be better and be number one. Now, it's easy to say that. And then we actually got to work, right? We started looking at his pipeline, how they were structuring loans, and I was throwing stuff out. I'm like, you didn't do enough here. Like, we didn't do debt consolidation here. We didn't offer this the right way. And he started, and luckily he was open, right? Where he didn't look at that like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He looked at it like, you're right. I can do better. Like, we're missing out stuff here. This is some basics we're missing. Um,
Part of your magic is the people that work for you love you.
Most people focus on themselves. What do I have to do? But if you take care of the 10, the 20, the 100, in some cases I add up to 3,000 people that work for me. If my focus is on them, I'm going to get taken care of, right?
Yeah.
Short term, I might get beat up, and I have plenty of stories where I've taken hits short term, but I've benefited long term, and people have always looked at me crazy sometimes for that. But again, that's another sidebar that I can go through a bunch of stories on that. But with Dan, just to come back to Dan, we had that month of 1.5. Then I said, okay, we need to do 2 million. We did 2 million. At that point, Dan knew he could get anything done. And we got to $4 million we ended December of that year. I took over in January. He was doing like $1 million a month. And by December, we squeaked it out. He was number one. Vegas was number one in the country. And
Amazing.
that's 4 million. So and no one had done more than like $4.5 million. I was at a meeting in January, our annual meeting, and I take a break because I'm getting excited in the meeting. Because when I'm in meetings, I'm thinking, okay, how can I do it again? What are we learning from this? How can I do more? And I called Dan up. I said, Dan, we need to do $10 million. And all he says is, okay, chief, when you want me to do it by? I said, April. He's like, all right, we're going. Well, we did 8.5 in April, and we did 10.2 million in May, and it changed everything. Like it changed, like we became in, I was the number one, I became the number one region in the country. We were by the end of the year before I got promoted to a national role, a territory role. We were number one in every measurable category.
All right, so pretend somebody's not in the mortgage business, right?
Yep.
They're not in the mortgage business. I know that you know way beyond just mortgages, how to manage, how to motivate. And they're sitting there and they're saying, I want to become wealthy.
Mhm.
What's your advice?
I think focusing on the wealthy is not really what you should be focusing on. That's the problem. You have
Okay.
to focus on what do I have to do every day to put myself in a better position? How can I, if being wealthy means I need to make more money, I need to get better roles, I need to get promoted, I need to maybe change industries, or I need to get a different education so I can be able to do something else. That's where the focus needs to be is
Resources.
yeah, the resources. Okay, how do I get to the next role, which may pay me 20,000 a year or 50,000 a year? You have to look at it from a long-term standpoint on how can I better myself? Because you're not going to go from making 50 grand a year to 500 grand a year just thinking that I want to be wealthy and I want to make a lot of money. Um, and we can go through that path, right? On what it takes from scrounging, and you have to make long-term decisions, not short-term, which we can go into now,
So
and
how
I
do you
can
feel
talk
about
about.
manifestation?
I think this is way before that book, The Secret, came out. It is something I obsessed about, and I don't know where it came from. I really don't, because I can
So you
tell you, I
just knew it in
remember.
your DNA, or did you hear it somewhere?
I think it's been part of my DNA, not my parents' DNA, because my parents, oh, they grew up extremely poor, poverty. I mean, my mother would not eat milk when she came here, or drink milk, because when she grew up, it was milk and bread. That was what they ate. My
Mm.
grandmother would crumble bread in her bowl and some milk, and when she came to the U.S., she never drank milk
My
again because
grandmother was the same way with bananas and pickles.
yeah,
She
you
she
don't because
that's all they had, so she wouldn't
that's all
eat.
they had, and then at some point you don't do it. But my mother always considered herself poor,
Mm.
even when they had a house that was paid for, rental homes that were paid for, um, even in retirement without working, they still had an income stream that was better than most, but they still always considered themselves poor. My mother more than my father, but it was never, yeah, they couldn't get out of that life,
Even
right?
when they had what they had, they still were in
Even when
that
they
place.
had what they had, and they had it because they worked, but they didn't necessarily say, I want to better myself and I'm going to do these steps. They just did what they did. We saved our money. We didn't really, they never spent any money. If I saved the money they saved, I would probably be retired by now. But I also believe in enjoying yourself along the way because they never did anything of joy or to have fun or anything like that, right? Um, so I don't know where it came from because I remember being in the bakery as like a 12 or 13-year-old kid, sacking bread, right? And thinking, yeah, I think I want to live in a $500,000 house. Again, this is what the
Yeah, that would probably
80s.
be like
This
a
is
three
by the
million
80s.
dollar
I'm like,
house now.
and then I'm like, nah, I want to live in $1 million house. And how am I going to get there? Well, I'm going to build a bakery up because at that point we have a business. I'm going to build a bakery up. I'm going to grow it. I'm going to, expand it. And yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And so that's kind of the first time. And I guess I'll even go back and it's
You
probably
never
going
questioned it
to,
though.
I never questioned it. And I can tell
You
you, one of
just
my
knew it as a
favorite,
fact.
it was a fact. It's just what I knew was going to happen. It was just how much? Is it a
What
half a
about,
million
okay,
dollar
so
house
that's
or is it a
good.
$1 million house?
I love that. But what about, so a lot of people, they manifest, right? Oh, it's a fact. It's a fact. It's a fact. most people, what happens is when they hit the roadblock, when they hit the obstacle, they panic and then they start manifesting back the other way. How have you been able to, because you've hit your roadblocks for sure in your life. You
Plenty.
know, you've hit your roadblocks, you've gone down and you
Mhm.
had to rebuild. How do you keep that belief that you're going to make it even when you hit hard times?
It is extremely hard because you do fold up a little bit. And, as you know, during the financial crisis of 2008, we had a mortgage company. We had it for about 3.5 years. We did
You owned
really
them. It
well.
was your mortgage company. You
It was
owned
my mortgage company. My partner and I started it. He was my mentor. Had a lot of respect for him and his family. And we started this mortgage company. And we really came out of the gate strong. We did really well. We employed up to 35 or 40 people. We were earning a good living, and then the financial crisis hit. It was really two hits. Like the first one, we some of our lenders that we dealt with went out of business. The type of loans we were doing were gone. We repivoted quickly. We started marketing to different loans, and we got back on track. And then come the summer of '08, and really, when Lehman Brothers got taken out, it really became a challenge. And a lot of companies went out of business. And, we started, we didn't make any money. And, we were both, I'm at this point 33 years old, 34 years old. I'd never really failed in this career. I was like bullets would hit me and I turn them into gold, right? No matter what it was, I turn it around. So it was like, give it to me, I'll make it work. And my partner was the same way, and he was 12 years older than me. He just always made it work. You ground it out, you just worked, you got it done, you figured out how to win. And we worked the heck out of it. And we didn't take a pay for 2 years. I drained everything I had. I mean, at 32 years old, I was sitting on, a couple of $100,000. I was really, my kids had money in their college account already. I'm like, all right, I got at my pace, I got a few $1 million by 40, by 50, I'll have 5, $10 million. I'll be, what a great pace we're in. Now, no one my age has this kind of money, right? That I was able to save and we got wiped out. And it was month after month. We're pulling money from our 401ks, draining, and finally to the point we didn't have any money. I mean, I remember we finally made it to say I had to finally tell my partner, I'm like, we got to close the company. Like I can't do it anymore. I'm literally have enough to survive the next few months, and we got to do something. I just can't do it. And we decided to close the company. We closed it in January of '09. I remember Thanksgiving of that year, having to put a $14 pie back because we didn't have the money to buy a pie for Thanksgiving, which was pretty brutal. And this is from, 2 years prior. I'm sitting there better than probably 99.9% of kids my age, right? And I still call myself a kid at that point because I was a kid, right? I was still young. And suddenly I had doubts. I'm like, I failed, right? And it was a lot. And I remember calling you all the time and I remember my wife actually calling you and saying, please call Nelson because I don't know how he is. He's not in a good state. And I was in a terrible state because I had two young kids. I had a wife that wasn't working. She had to go back to work as a nurse. I failed. Like I'm supposed to be a protector, right? I'm supposed to provide for my family. And here I am, like I lost it all. And could I have made a bad decision? Could we exited earlier? Could I preserve my capital? Like all that stuff is constantly going through my head. I'm like, how could I let us get to this point? And it was my ego. I'm like, I know it's my ego. We're gonna win. And my partner's ego. We don't fail. Like we just keep going. And it took me back to my parents, where when I was in high school, they lost their major supplier that was like 80% of their business. And suddenly 80% less revenue. There was barely a business there. They still kept it for years to come, but it suddenly wasn't really a cash driver. It was just enough to get groceries and pay the basic bills, but not really excess. And they never did anything about it. Like I even tried to push them in those days. Let's expand some routes. Let's do this. And I got pushed back. I even took a year off from college to try to position the business better so we could at least sell it. And I got constant pushback and they gave up. And I saw them deteriorate because they gave up. And here I am now. That's weighing over me like I can't give up. I have to do something. And what do I do? And okay, now my dreams of and we were building a $1.4 million house that we never moved into, this beautiful house in Scottsdale that was, 4,400 square feet, just absolutely beautiful. We had to pull the plug on that. And, we ended up moving to Rhode Island for a month for a job as a sales manager with a guy I knew. And then I got recruited in that time period to move to Pennsylvania, which is the company I ended up spending 15 years with, to take a sales manager job, making $43,000 base and some guarantees along the way. So it went from making, $400,000 a year, being a senior vice president at young age to, all right, I'm now back in a realm that I was at 24 years old.
How did you keep that joy? I remember you when you came through it. Yeah, when you went through it, it was hard for sure. And you guys had definitely a lot of years where money was tight. But when I would see you and the kids and I'd come to the house, you still had joy. You still showed up for your kids. You still were a dad. You still were a husband. How did you not internalize it and make that about your worth in that moment?
It was about my wife and kids because that was the joy. The joy was that my wife is an unbelievable partner. I mean, she just went right back to work, working night shifts as a nurse. I took care of the kids. We scraped by. Um, the kids didn't really know we didn't have money. They were young. They were young. They didn't know. And we would still do things. We would go to the parks all the time. We would spend our money on passes to the museums because that was $150 for the year, and we'd go there 5, 10 times, and we'd join all the museums that we could, and every once in a while we did a trip at the beach, and it was I remember running out of money on a Thursday night at the boardwalk, and it was a really late dinner night that night, and the next morning I happened to get paid, and we were able to finish up Friday and Saturday pretty good before going home, right? It was that kind of stuff that really lasted 10 years. I mean, it was a grind, and I would be down. I remember walking into work Monday mornings after my wife would work weekends, and I had the 2 or 3 kids, right? 3 kids at the time. And that's what I did all weekend was take care of my kids. And here I am walking in Monday morning. I'm tired. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I am doing all this work for peanuts and I'm not able to save anything. And hell, we got, our cable shut off once or twice. I had to get on a payment plan with the electric company. I mean, this is like, I'm like, but when I walked into work, I had to be a leader, right? And when I walked into work, I had to take care of the people in front of me. And one of the things I always told people is when you come into work, leave all your problems at the trash can because it's going to be a lot worse than if you have a crappy life outside of here and your personal life sucks and then you don't have a job on top of it. So work was always my sanctuary. Even back when I was young, I didn't know how well I knew how to function outside of the office sometimes. What I knew and what my identity was work, which is why I worked so much, which is why on a Saturday when we lived together, I would drive to work, an hour to work and be there and then realize after being there a couple of hours, I'm, what the heck am I doing here? Am I really doing this much more? And I made a lot of those decisions sometimes that were just be in the office for the sake of being in the office, right? And I learned from that stuff that, look, you don't have to do all that. And I
Was that
find
because you needed to quiet your mind?
I did. I feel like I had to always do something to get ahead, right? To just
Yeah.
how do I become a little bit better? And this goes back to what you said, like people that are grinding it out every day, but they're not getting. What are they? But what are you doing? How are you grinding? You just work for the work's sake, or you actually trying to figure how do I get a little bit better? One of the things I realized during that time period when we closed the company and I started applying for jobs is I had never finished my bachelor's degree at that point, right? I'd
Mhm.
started as an intern. I got promoted while I was in school. I chose the path of getting promoted because for me, and I don't recommend it, I don't recommend my kids, I wanted to grow up too fast, right? It was always, all right, I want to get into it. I want to get into my career and not enjoy the time that I'm supposed to enjoy now. I'm supposed to learn stuff at a certain age, right? I got my real estate license when I was still in high school. I started working all this
I didn't
stuff.
even know that.
Yeah, yeah. I was just a senior in high school. Or I got my
Wow,
real
I
estate.
didn't know you had your real estate license when you were in high school.
Yeah.
It's wild.
And but I almost rushed too much, right? And not focused on what should I be doing right now. What I should have been doing during those years is how do I educate myself better? How do I make sure I at least understand when I'm in the room with certain people that I know how to present myself, that I can put a presentation together? Those were the things that I didn't realize at those times because for me it was all about I need to get ahead. I need to do this. I need to do that. Again, it
You know
served me
what
well.
though? Like it's interesting because a lot of people who have success are similar to what you're talking about. They are absolutely obsessed, right? And they have the passion and they just have the work ethic and they're able to pivot and they just focus everything on becoming successful externally. But they don't have what you have outside of that, which is what makes your life interesting. You have success at work, but you also have success at home, in your personal life, internally, the way you feel about yourself. How are you able to be so obsessed and so just focused on becoming success externally, but also finding a way to have that at home?
It took a 10-year grind. And I really spent 10 years where at the company I was at, New Res, where it was slow growths in positions and income for a while, for 10 years. It was like, and during that time period, I hired kids out of college, trained them, and within a year and a half or two, some of them were making more money than me. And my wife would always question me, and she's like, "Why don't you go back to this role and make more money? Why don't you be a loan officer? Because these guys are making more money than you are. How are they making more money than you when you have all this talent?" And I had to keep telling her, which was really hard, right? When you're you're scrambling, she's working night shifts or weekends, and I'm not doing any good for anybody, right? I'm literally leaving work a couple of days a week at 5:15, 5 o'clock to be home to, have my wife leave for work, and then I'm dropping off the kids on those days and coming in the office at 9:30. And to me, that was like a pit in my stomach. I'm coming into work at 9:30. I'm supposed to be the first one in the office. I'm supposed to be the last one to leave, right? It forced me to, like, I couldn't just be in the office. I couldn't do it because I had obligations outside of the office that were more important. But it was a really hard period for me because I constantly felt torn, constantly felt like I'm not giving my family what they need. I'm not providing for my family like I should. I can't get ahead, right? We juggle. My wife she could write a check to the grocery store on Wednesday because we knew it would take 2 days for them to cash it and we had it planned just right. So by the time I got paid, it would cover. I mean, we had to juggle all that kind of stuff, which here I am at work, I'm moving up roles, I'm taking on more responsibility, and I'm still juggling, you know, when we buy groceries, right?
Yeah.
And it was really hard. And a lot of times, I felt it. I was down, right? I was down a lot. And I remember calling you a lot. And but I always had this personality just, all right, you got to put a smile on your face, right? If I come in miserable, everyone around me is going to be miserable, right? I got to come in and I got to be the guy that turns it around. I got to be the guy
If
that
you can get
says,
your physiology feeling good.
doesn't matter, right? Suck it up. Like we got
Yeah.
to get it done, right? And for me, it's always getting in that moment, getting to work and doing my job really well.
Hmm.
That gave me that boost that, all right, we got stuff done. Even though
Hmm.
I leave there and I might walk to the car and be like, oh my God, I can't, like, what are we gonna do this
Yeah.
weekend? I don't have any money for this weekend. But again, all those years when I'm seeing people make more money than me, then I'm like, I hired that guy, I trained that. How is this person's a putz? How are they making twice as much as me?
I hired that putz and trained him.
Yeah, I did plenty. And with my wife, it was always like I'd always tell him like I'm making decisions for the long term, hun. It's not a short term. Yes, I could make $200,000 in this role instead of the 105,000 I'm gonna make that we barely get by that. Um, and she's like, I trust you. I trust that. Yeah, I hate the fact that you're not in the roles that you should be in because you're really good at what you do.
What was the moment where you where you said, when you came back, where you said, now I've done it, I've made it, and I feel like I can be the provider and protector I want to be?
It was, I guess it's when you grind for all these years, those 10 years at the company of, never making more for, I think, a 10-year period. I don't think I made more than $130,000, right? And
It's
um,
interesting to me that you, even now, have to almost whisper that.
because
But you're doing
it
so
hurt.
well.
Yeah.
You've done so well. You guys are having the best life. You have so much coming to you
Yeah.
still, growth ahead of you. I could see it. You're on that. You're not like at the bottom of the climb. You're in it.
Yep.
You're doing great, but still, that still causes pain.
It hurts. It hurts. I might have a tear in my eye right now because it was wonderful years because I got to tell you one more thing. With my wife working weekends, it forced me to be a dad, a present dad. It forced me to take my kids to the Philadelphia Museum of Art, take three little kids under 5 to the art museum and to cook for them, which now, I love cooking and I own all the cooking on the weekend. And now that I work from home half the time, I cook a majority of the time during the week too. And I love to cook, but it started because I was forced during those time periods because I'm home with my kids. I can't take them out to eat all the time. How can we make pretzels? Like, how can we make some food? And we started cooking. And I spent time with my kids that I never would have gotten if my wife was around. Because if my wife was around, I know she would have taken the top role and I would have been the backup, right? I would have been, and suddenly I'm the one that's got to change the diapers and I'm the one that's got to take them out. And I was exhausted by the end of Sunday night. I was like, I need to go back to work to get a break because I'm exhausted, right? And I was like, I'm fried. So that's what I appreciate most from that time period is that time I got with the kids. And I slowly made a little bit more money and we were able to adjust my wife's schedule at the time, but whenever we made a little bit more money, we took the opportunity for my wife to work a little bit less to get more time with the kids. So it's not like we said, okay, because she could have easily have worked full time and done well as a wife. I could have made my income and we would have been better during those years, a lot better. But we chose no daycare. We need to always be there with our kids. So she chose to work night shifts and I would come home, tag her out. She'd come in, she'd get the kids in the morning. There's days I couldn't tell you how many days she didn't sleep. I couldn't tell you days we left for vacation and got on a drive and she literally come home from work and she'd sleep in the minivan while we were driving somewhere, in between the seats, right? We did crazy stuff, but we were always with our kids. Our kids were always with one of us. We always fed them. We always did that stuff. So that's the key that I really take from those days. But that buildup on work during that time period, I built a really good reputation, right? Which is role by role, department by department, person by person, build a reputation within the company, a constant in the company, right? That got me to a role of chief of staff, which put me in a senior management role, really an executive role with in the fastest growing mortgage company in the country. That took me to another role of running two of our businesses, our title and appraisal business, and that was the one that freed me. And there's a couple here, but that one freed me because I took this business and I kind of took it by mistake. I was upset that the person that was running it had not grown it. We had to use another title company on the outside that was owned by one of our biggest competitors. I burst into my CEO's office. I'm like, this is BS. We're giving away revenue. This is $10 million, $50 million a year in revenue. He said, give me those businesses. I'll run them. And sure enough, like 2 weeks later, he's like, I need you to pivot. You need to run these two businesses. And I said, okay. And I went in and luckily I'd known a lot
You
of these
created your
people.
opportunity.
I created my opportunity, right? And I went in and these guys were struggling and we knew we needed to do more. And I applied that same logic. We need to do 15,000 units a
Oh,
month. And at this point, we never did more than 1,200 units a month. They're like, how are we going to do it? I'm like, we're going to hire 300 people in the next 3 months. I said, you tell me what you need. I'll get it done. My job was take the barriers down. I gave them all the resources. They knew how to do the job. I didn't, but I gave them the resources. I worked with the lender because I was still 1 foot in from the lender on a senior level there and running these businesses. to make sure we were cohesive. And we had dropped down in that business. We were only getting 44% of the business. And in about 18 months, we had 85% of the business and we spit out like $50 million in net income for the
Wow.
business.
Amazing.
And and you asked like when I finally felt good is when I got a call and said your bonus is $350,000 for the year.
Wow.
And I was like, I remember where I was sitting. And I'm like, it was the first time I actually got a bonus, which was exactly what I wanted. Like I had that number in my head, and most of the time, you get a number and it's like, that's not the number. And I called my wife. I'm like, I just got this bonus. And she's like, you deserve it. Like
Oh,
it was like, and then that set the tone. Suddenly, okay,
and
this
so
is
did
now.
she, by the way.
Yes, yes, it was good for everyone. We're able to finally, you know, spend a little bit more on a vacation. We're able to put money away in savings, able to put money in the kids' college accounts. Like it suddenly, and then, bonuses like that became kind of what I had since that time period. Um, and from that role, just to give you one more on, I still at this point constantly felt as an outsider too. And I've always had that feeling.
Like imposter syndrome?
Yeah, yeah, I'm an imposter. And I'm gonna go. I remember reading Jack Welch's book as a young kid, and him saying he got promoted to CEO at 44 years old. He's like, in his book, he says, "I'm in that boardroom thinking, what the heck am I doing in here? I don't belong in here." Right? And that was one of those things from his book that jumped out with me, and I read that in my 20s. That here, this which became a legendary CEO, here he is getting that role, one of the most iconic companies, and thinking, what the heck am I doing in this role? I don't belong here. I'm not good enough, right? And he's a guy from Massachusetts, so maybe that's why he feels that way. It's that grinder attitude, right? But I always looked at certain roles and said, man, I can't do that role. I can't believe that person's running that business. I don't know if I could do that. And I know I'm not invincible, right? Because that's an ego, right? That's your ego that
Yeah.
I can always win. And if you look at it that way, and it's a balance because you have to think I'm going to win, but you also have to understand I can't make stupid decisions and lose because of my ego. So it's really hard, right? But what I try to do is go back to that time period, like, okay, during that time period, it was all ego and I lost all our money. I put us in a bad position. We had to, all these people lost their jobs. I need to look at things different. So I use it from that standpoint. I use it, so I invest money. I think about all that money.
I think you are invincible.
What's that?
I actually think you are invincible.
Oh, I don't believe that. I don't believe
You're invincible as a person. Your joy, your presence, your ability to love life and be a good person is invincible.
you make me blush.
It's true.
It's true. Well,
You've
it's
gone
because
through so much, but you are invincible. You go through it, you can go down, but you will always rise up.
the thing when you go down, if you believe that's the end, you're done.
What do you think is the most important decision you can make in your life?
Do something.
Do something?
You have to do something. Figure out what you can do next to be a little bit better. Like you have to have action. And it can't be, you can't focus on the bad. You can't be, oh my God, I'm in a bad role right now. I'm in a bad position. It's all right. What are the things I need to do to get better and focus on that? You have to do something.
People often look at people like you. It's happened to me in my life before, and they go, "Oh, he got really lucky." And it's like you don't see how much sweat, blood, tears, effort, pain goes into. I always say when people say he was in the right place at the right time, you
He put
actually
himself
can't.
there.
By being the only way to be in the right place at the right time is to be in the right place all the time.
Yep.
It's by going to that office early, and when that manager came when you first started out, it's by showing up. It's by going into the office saying, I can do this better. I can help you in this situation. It might not always work. It might not be the time that you get the reward, but if you keep showing up in the right place, life is about location, location, location. I say it all the time. I've talked about it on my podcast. You have to be in the right location all the time. If you want to lose weight, the right location is not McDonald's.
No.
Right? But seriously, it's the location. The right location is not hanging out with people who don't eat well all the time and going out drinking. If you want to be successful, the right location isn't hanging about out with a bunch of derelicts who want to go out drinking every single night and aren't motivated. And you and I knew that from a young age, which is why we chose each other. That's why we chose this friendship because we wanted to be in the right location. So leads me to my next question. What makes a best friend?
I think it's a yin yang, right? We're different enough, but the same in core values. No different than what I talked about with my wife, right? We're different enough that you can't be the same person, right? We're different enough, but we share the same core values. And I remember you and I sitting there on a rock, Elephant Rock in Little Compton, watching a plane come by, right? And thinking, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. Hey, we should when we make it, we should get a billboard outside of the bridge with our faces on it, right? Here
Yes,
we are,
yes.
just a couple of dumb 18-year-olds,
Yeah.
but you have been extremely successful in your career. I've always looked up to you, right? And I use it with my kids all the time about picking the right people. I'm like, you need to surround yourself with the right people. I said, why do you think my best friend has been so successful over the years? Right? We're completely different industries, but yet we have followed this success. Sometimes not at the same time, right? You've
Yep.
been up, I've been down, I've been up, you've been down. Like we've had this like roller coaster over the years, but I also feel
Totally.
like that's we're always there to support each other. We have never judged each other.
Never.
We have never taken each other for granted. We have always respected if I was down and you were at the top of your game, I was so excited about that and I was
Yep.
your cheerleader. And you've been the same with me because you've seen me at the bottom grind, you've seen me at the top, and it's never, oh, I'm doing terrible. He's doing well. I can't be around them. It was, I need to be around them because it makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Because I know
Yeah.
and you got to be able to call each other out, right? I think we have no problem saying you're being an idiot. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing, right? But you got to care about each other, and yeah, I think you got to have the right people around you. And I tell my kids that all the time. I'm like, we have this friendship. We've built it from teenagers. We knew, and we didn't even talk about that, the decisions we made along the way, saying, hey, we need to be together because these other clowns around us, they're a bunch of clowns,
Yeah.
and we're gonna hang out with them right now and have some fun and make fun of them and get some laughs. But these aren't the guys that we're gonna be with, and we need to be. And we made conscious decisions on that, and I don't think there's not a lot of 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds that do that, right?
I
I
called
think,
you. I remember calling you and saying, "Hey, this is going to sound weird. I know we don't hang out a lot. We've just seen each other a few times, but I think we should be friends because I'm hanging out with a bunch of people that I don't feel like are going to lift me up, and I want to surround myself with people who are going to help me to be more successful in life." And you said, "I feel the same way." So we
I
had an
remember that
arranged
call. I remember that.
friendship, and we actually went out like on a friendship get to, oh, this is going to work sort of thing, and it totally worked. And it's so
Yep.
weird though, like not only did we lift each other up and we have success, we are so perfectly aligned as our sense of humor, our outrageousness, our ability to be spontaneous, our adventure, our fun with adventure in life.
Yep.
My kids tell me all the time, they say, "You sound just like Uncle Nelson just now."
Yeah.
My kids call you uncle because you're like an
Yeah.
uncle to them. The same thing for me. But they go, "That sounded exactly like Uncle Nelson." You said, "I'll show you," blah, blah, blah. And I go, "Yeah, we are very similar." But it's weird that we arranged it.
Well, it goes back to winter break. 15 of us go down to the beach, right? We all jump in the water together. Let's do a polar plunge, right? You were part of that 15. We all came out. We were freezing. A year later, we're all together again. Let's go do the polar plunge. We get there. You and I are the only ones that go in.
Yeah.
And for me, and I said this at your wedding, that was a moment where I'm like, he's different than all these others. He follows through. And that was one of the moments for me, right? It was
We've
that
been
you
going
called
in
me,
that
and for
cold
me, it was
water.
that we're different. Like we followed through a year later, and I feel for me that was one of those moments
Yeah.
that okay, we got close because I'm like, he's not like these others, right? Yeah, let's go do it, and then you get there and you don't do it. No, we said we're gonna come here and do it. We're gonna do it. We know what we're gonna expect, but we're still jumping in because we said we were gonna do it.
And we still do for each other. Like when I moved to California, you were doing well in the mortgage business. I was not doing well as a TV person yet. Didn't have a job, didn't have any money, slept on your couch, and your office was 40 miles. I was probably about 40 miles, right? Rancho Cucamonga. 40 miles from our house. I would drive you to work. You would have no car all day, no way to go to lunch, no way to go to other meetings. And you would let me take your car all over California looking for work.
I don't
Always.
even remember that. I didn't even think
Always.
about
I
it.
would
That's
drive
just
with
what
you
you
all
did.
the way to work every day to Rancho Cucamonga. You would have no car. I was putting all these miles on your car all day long. I was sleeping on your couch for free. And you showed up. You showed up when I needed you. You've always showed up when I've needed you. If I've ever needed you, you were there. You were like, if I said, Nelson, I need you to jump for me, you'd say, how high? Always. You never questioned it. If I need you, I know even now, if I need you, I can count on you. Always.
That's how it works. And vice versa. That's
Yeah.
how it works.
That cold water. I remember you called me. I need help moving from Phoenix. Okay.
Yep. Let's
I'm
go. Yeah.
there.
I'm broke. Can you
I'm
drive
on
with
a
me, please? We
plane.
need to do it in 3 days, not 10 days like last time.
Yeah. We drove across country in the car with two cats,
Two
meowing
cats.
the whole time.
Let me borrow money when I didn't have any more money. And it's what we did.
Always back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. What do you think makes for a good partner in life?
You have the same values. You have to respect each other. You have to be honest. My wife and I call each other out constantly. If I'm being a jerk, it's instant. If she's being a jerk, it's instant. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, we are, I don't want to say bicker, but we call each other out. My kids got it. That's just how it is. Like, they act the same way if someone's off, but you have to be honest. You have to have share the same values. I sometimes I see couples where it's like so different, like crazy stuff that I'm like, oh my God, like that doesn't even like, yeah, I want kids. She doesn't want kids. Like, probably something you should have figured out a long time ago, right? But I think yeah, that's it. You have to share the same values. You have to have, you have to be able to call each other out. And like my relationship with my wife just kind of grew over the years. And again, I think those difficult moments in our life when we were broke and scrambling for years actually strengthened our relationship and makes us appreciate. She still thanks me to this day. She hasn't worked as a nurse for 5 or 6 years. And she still thanks me on a Friday night that she doesn't have to go to work, after all this time. And she still says, thank you for being able to provide for us. And I don't have to go to work anymore. Like
What's the biggest compliment your kids could give you?
um, they actually wrote a card for me for Father's Day this year, which is the best card I ever had. And it was very consistent from my 10-year-old to my 19-year-old. Uh, Thanks for supporting me in everything you do. Thanks for helping me with the hard stuff. Thanks for providing me direction. Like it was all really consistent of what I did for them. And I like that because I do feel like it's my job to coach them, guide them, right? And hey, you're off. You got to make mistakes, and we let our kids make mistakes, but we try to make sure there's at least guardrails there where if they hit a guardrail, we're bouncing
Hmm.
them back in, right? It's like, okay, good. You made a mistake. Did you learn from it? Pop, let's get back on the road, right? And
I like the guardrails.
yeah,
That's good. All right. What do you think the order of these in importance are? Hard work, passion for what you do, or the ability to adapt?
I'd say ability to adapt. Um, Hard work and passion. And I say that passion for me, I think has changed over the years. Because I don't always feel the same. And we could probably go on a lot about this. When I was younger, it was a different passion about it. Now I look at it different. I don't use the word passion where I'm passionate about this. I do it differently today. And it's hard to explain. It's probably something I have to really dig in on, but I do believe in the work, enjoyment of the work is probably more like it. And it's not necessarily what I do isn't always it's not always like fun. The enjoyment for me is the people, right? What am I doing for the people? Are we bettering what we do? I guess that's where my passion comes in. It's the work itself is always the same. It's the same as it's been for years. The grind's the same. My grind is the same it was before. There's good days, there's bad days, there's days where I'm like, oh my goodness, I wish I was just sitting on an island somewhere, right? Um, but you have to show up, which is where the work comes in no matter what. And you have to at least have joy. You have to have joy for what you're doing and that passion and enjoyment. So, but adaption, the other stuff doesn't matter if you don't adapt.
That is totally true. I just talked to this guy who is a coach to Olympians, and he was a PGA golfer, very smart guy. And he said that that is the number one difference between everybody who he trains, obviously has talent, lots of talent to
Yeah,
even make it to him. But the people that are the greats, what separates the greats from the goods is the greats only live in the current moment, and they know how to adapt when something happens in that moment. But they're not thinking 5 steps ahead. They're not thinking 5 steps behind. They're right in that moment. And when something happens, they are fantastic at adapting because they're not on the tee driving, thinking about the water, thinking about the woods, thinking about what happened on the last shot. They are only looking at that ball. But if there's wind,
yeah,
if the conditions are different, they know how to adapt.
right.
They adapt to what matters and they don't pay attention to what doesn't.
That's
So
it.
I'm going to leave. This is the last thing I want you to answer. Um, what would 82-year-old Nelson, the guy that had the best life, so happy, so joyous, everything went his way, what would he tell you about what you need to do over the next 30 years?
Yeah, enjoy the moments. Don't get lost in the moments. And I sometimes do this. We're on a vacation, spend a little bit more than we wanted to spend. And I'm like, it's like, all right, be present. My wife helps me with this. Be present. I'm like, we're able to do this, right? We're here. Is it going to matter in the long run that we spent an extra couple of $1,000 on a vacation that we didn't plan, right? And it's because then you look back in the memories that the kids have, it's you don't think about it, right? And so it's yeah, don't I hate to use the word don't sweat the small stuff, but
Why? Why do you hate that?
it's a book, right? So I'm like quoting a book, right? Don't sweat the small stuff. But it's
Yeah,
like
well,
just
somebody came up with it for a good reason.
yeah, it's long term. It's a marathon, right? And it's not about winning every day. It's about winning for the long term. So
Well, this has been fun. I know your story, but it's actually interesting to hear it all at once. It really was. It gave me a totally new perspective on kind of not just I knew the facts of what you went through and I was with you along the way, but to hear the emotions of how you think and how you do things and how you care, it made it very obvious to me why we've been best friends for
yeah.
35 years.
Yeah. It was
Because
cool to let it out because we really haven't I mean we have bits and pieces of conversations,
we have
right?
5 minutes here between the kids, 10 minutes there, then we're together, you're cooking, I'm cooking. But to hear you tell me your whole story, and I love you so dearly. You are family to me. You have been for a long, long time.
Uncle
And when I
Rich.
hear you talk about what you've been through and how you've handled it, it just makes me love you even more. You're such a
Nice.
deep, awesome, caring, kind leader, and you are such a great example. I hope that people in your company listen to this or watch this thing and take that away from this. You don't have to lead with cruelty. You can lead, you can make hard decisions and make the right decisions for your company, but do it with kindness, do it with love.
Yeah.
So thank you,
We'll do
Nelson.
it. All right. Well, you're much more emotional than I am, so you always get the emotional factor.
Really? You think so?
Oh, I think so.
You think I'm more awesome is what you're saying?
You're more awesome. You're
Okay, we'll
more
leave it at
awesome.
that. Thank
All
you
right.
so much. This has been Living Rich Sirop. I'm more awesome. You've heard it from my best friend.
You are more awesome. See ya.